Welcome to my channel. Have you ever heard someone say, "Ah, those were the golden days"? But what if I told you that behind every golden age, there's a darker, hidden story? In this video, we're going to explore the dark side of the most celebrated times in history. Trust me, once you see what's behind the curtain, you'll never look at the past the same way again. Let's get into it. Chapter 1. The Idea of a Golden Age. Is it really golden? When we hear the words Golden Age, what do we imagine? Beautiful buildings, happy people, peaceful times, and amazing inventions. It sounds like a perfect time in history, a time when everything was good. But was it really? Or have we only been told half of the story? In this video, we're going to explore some of the world's most famous golden ages. But before we do that, we need to understand what a golden age truly means. A golden age is usually described as a time when a country or culture had peace, money, power, and big ideas. People were creating art, science was growing, and things looked great on the surface. But if we look a little deeper, we'll see that not everyone was smiling, not everyone had a voice, and not everyone was free. You see, history is often told by the people who had power: kings, emperors, rich leaders, and thinkers. They wrote the books, they built the statues, they told their stories. But what about the people who didn't have power? What about the workers, the slaves, the poor, the women, and the people whose names we never read in history books? What was life like for them during these so-called golden ages? This is where the story gets interesting, and a little darker. Imagine this. You walk into a beautiful palace full of gold and silk. But behind the walls there are hundreds of workers, maybe even slaves, who built that palace with their hands and pain. The people outside the palace are hungry, sick, and tired. But none of that is shown in the paintings or poems. Only the beauty is remembered, not the suffering that made it possible. This happens again and again in history. Every time we hear about a great period, we have to ask, great for whom? Who really enjoyed the art, the progress, the peace, and who was left out, ignored, or even hurt? This chapter is important because it teaches us one big lesson. Stories are powerful, but they are also incomplete. The golden age might be golden for the top 5%, but for the rest, it might feel more like a dark age. So as we go through the next chapters together, we will open both eyes. We'll enjoy the beauty, yes, but we'll also notice what's hidden in the shadows. Get ready, because in the next chapter, we're going back to ancient Greece, the land of philosophers and democracy, but also of slavery and silence. Chapter 2. Ancient Greece, glorious philosophy, silent suffering. When we think of ancient Greece, we often think of wisdom, beauty, and great minds. Names like Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle come to mind. We picture white marble buildings, people wearing togas, and public debates in large open forums. It sounds like a place full of learning, peace, and freedom. Many people even call it the birthplace of democracy, a place where people had power and freedom to speak. But not all people. Let's slow down for a moment and look more closely. In Athens, the center of the Greek Golden Age, democracy was real. But it had very strong limits. Only male citizens could vote or speak in public debates. That means women, slaves, foreigners, and even poor men were not allowed to participate. And guess what? Those people made up more than 80 to 90% of the population. So, when we say ancient Greece was a democracy, we have to ask, a democracy for whom? Slavery was also a big part of life in ancient Greece. Historians estimate that there were tens of thousands of slaves in Athens during its golden period. These slaves worked in homes, in the fields, and even in the silver mines that made Athens rich. They had no rights, no voices. They were treated like tools, not people. And yet, we rarely hear about them when people talk about how great ancient Greece was. Even women, yes, even women born in Athens, had very few freedoms. They couldn't vote. They couldn't own property. Most of them were kept indoors, managing the home while men went out to debate and create history. They were often married very young and had little choice in how they lived. Meanwhile, Athens was at war almost all the time. Behind the scenes of art and philosophy, there were battles, political fights, and a lot of bloodshed. The famous Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta lasted for nearly 30 years. Thousands of people died. Cities were destroyed. Lives were lost. So yes, ancient Greece gave the world many beautiful ideas: democracy, philosophy, art, and architecture. But it also hid many dark truths, truths about inequality, war, and silence. The rich had time to think and talk because others were working or suffering in the background. That is the real cost of a golden age. Now, this doesn't mean we throw away everything good from ancient Greece. It simply means we see the whole picture. We can still admire the wisdom of the past while also understanding the pain behind it. In the next chapter, we'll travel east to explore the Islamic Golden Age, a time of incredible science, medicine, and culture. But once again, behind the brightness, we'll find shadows waiting. Chapter 3: The Islamic Golden Age: Science, Light, and Shadows. The Islamic Golden Age is often remembered as one of the brightest times in human history. It began around the 8th century and lasted for hundreds of years. During this time, the Muslim world became a center of learning, science, art, and culture. Cities like Baghdad, Cordoba, and Cairo were full of libraries, hospitals, and schools. Scholars translated Greek, Roman, Indian, and Persian knowledge into Arabic. They didn't just copy, they improved, questioned, and invented. The list of achievements is long and impressive. Algebra was developed by a man named Al-Khwarizmi. Modern medicine took big steps forward thanks to people like Ibn Sina, also known as Avicenna. There were breakthroughs in astronomy, chemistry, literature, and architecture. Papermaking spread across the empire, allowing knowledge to be shared faster than ever before. It truly was a time of light. But once again, we need to ask, was this light for everyone? The truth is, while the Islamic world was far more advanced in many ways than Europe at the time, it wasn't perfect. Underneath the golden glow were serious problems, some of them painful, some of them dangerous. Let's start with power. This golden age took place under strong empires like the Abbasid Caliphate. These rulers supported science and the arts, but they also ruled with control and fear. People who challenged religious or political ideas could be punished or even killed. Some famous thinkers, like Al-Razi, faced harsh criticism for questioning accepted beliefs. Others were forced to hide their ideas, or they were erased from history later. Religious conflict was also part of the picture. Although the empire was home to many Christians, Jews, and people of other faiths, these groups often had to pay special taxes or live under strict rules. And even within Islam, there were deep divisions. Sunni and Shia groups fought for power, and those fights sometimes turned violent. Then there's the class system. Not everyone had access to learning or wealth. Much of the beauty and progress we remember came from the upper class, the educated, the wealthy, the people close to the rulers. Meanwhile, workers, farmers, and the poor had to live hard lives. Their stories are not written in gold. They are often not written at all. Even the famous House of Wisdom in Baghdad, one of the greatest libraries in history, was destroyed during war. In 1258, the Mongols invaded and burned it down. Thousands of books were lost forever. The river is said to have turned black from the ink of all the knowledge that was destroyed. So, what do we learn from this? The Islamic Golden Age gave the world incredible knowledge. It helped shape modern science, math, and medicine. But just like other golden ages, it was full of contradictions. Light and shadow lived side by side. We can admire the brilliance, and we should. But we must also remember the people whose voices were never heard, whose ideas were silenced, or whose lives were hard while others made history. In the next chapter, we go to Europe's most famous golden age, the Renaissance, full of art, invention, and beauty, but also full of secrets, sickness, and struggle. Chapter 4. The Renaissance. Art for the rich, pain for the poor. When we hear the word Renaissance, we often think of beauty. Paintings by Leonardo da Vinci, sculptures by Michelangelo, and the stunning buildings of Florence and Rome. We hear about the return of classical knowledge, humanism, and new ways of thinking. It's known as a time when Europe woke up from the Dark Ages and entered a new, golden light of creativity and learning. But here's the question. Who was really enjoying this light? And who was left in the dark? The Renaissance began in the 14th century in Italy and spread across Europe. It was a time of great change. Artists created masterpieces. Scientists like Galileo challenged old beliefs. Writers like Shakespeare gave us unforgettable stories. It truly was a cultural explosion. But behind all that beauty was a different kind of story, one not told in the history books or painted in the museums. Let's start with money. All this art and progress didn't appear by magic. It was paid for by very rich families like the Medici family in Florence. These families got their money from banking, taxes, and sometimes corruption. While they were building beautiful churches and supporting famous painters, the poor were working in hard jobs, living in tiny cold houses, and struggling to eat. In fact, many Renaissance artists were not free to paint what they wanted. They were paid by rich people to paint their portraits, decorate their buildings, or show their power. Art became a way to show off wealth, not always to express true freedom or deep ideas. And what about regular people? Most of them couldn't read or write. They didn't go to schools or study science. The Renaissance may have been a time of learning, but learning was for the elite. If you were a farmer, a servant, or a street worker, this golden age didn't look so golden. Also, Europe during the Renaissance was not peaceful. There were wars, violence, and deadly diseases like the Black Plague, which killed millions. Imagine living during a time when people were painting angels on ceilings while outside, children were dying from sickness and hunger. And let's not forget women. Just like in other golden ages, women had very few rights. They were mostly expected to marry, have children, and stay quiet. A few women, like Artemisia Gentileschi, became artists, but they had to fight hard for respect. Their voices were often ignored or erased. So yes, the Renaissance gave the world amazing art and new ideas. But most of that beauty came from a very small part of society. For many others, it was still a time of struggle, silence, and survival. This doesn't mean we stop celebrating the great works of this period, but it does mean we look at them with open eyes. We ask deeper questions. We see both the light and the shadow. In the next chapter, we move into the modern age, the Industrial Revolution. Machines, factories, and speed changed the world forever. But what did we lose along the way? Chapter 5. The Industrial Revolution, Progress with a Price. The Industrial Revolution was one of the biggest changes in human history. It began in the late 1700s in Britain and quickly spread across Europe and the rest of the world. People moved from farms to cities. Machines replaced hand tools. New inventions like the steam engine, the spinning jenny, and the factory system changed how everything worked. From how clothes were made to how people traveled. It sounds like a time of great progress, right? And yes, in many ways it was. There were more jobs, more products, faster transport, and new technologies. People began living longer, cities grew, and the modern world as we know it was born. That's why many people call it a new kind of golden age, an age of science, speed, and success. But if we stop and look behind the noise of machines and the smoke of progress, we will see a much darker side of this revolution. Let's start with the workers. In the new factories, people worked 12 to 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, in dangerous and dirty conditions. There were no safety rules, no health protections. If someone lost a finger or even a life, they were often just replaced by another desperate worker. And it gets worse. Many of these workers were children, some as young as 5 years old. These children worked in coal mines, crawling through tight, dark spaces. They worked in textile mills, cleaning machines while they were still running. They earned just a few coins and were often beaten if they were too slow or made a mistake. Then there's the environment. The smoke from factories filled the air. Rivers turned black with chemicals. Trees were cut down, and nature was destroyed to build cities and machines. People began to live in small, crowded houses near the factories with little clean air or fresh water. Diseases spread quickly. The Industrial Revolution may have made some cities rich, but it also made many people sick and tired. Let's also talk about women. Many women worked in factories too, doing long hours for very little pay. They had to take care of children and work outside the home at the same time. They were often treated badly and had very few rights. And still, they had to smile and survive. Of course, There were people who became very rich during this time. Factory owners, investors, and bankers made huge profits. They lived in big houses with servants. But their wealth was built on the backs of poor workers who had no other choice. So once again, we ask the same question. Who really benefited from this golden age of machines? And who paid the price? This chapter teaches us that progress is not always good for everyone. It can come with pain, pollution, and problems. And if we only look at the inventions and forget the human cost, we don't see the full picture. But even in this dark time, something interesting happened. People began to fight back. Workers formed unions. Women demanded rights. Reforms slowly began. This gives us hope that every shadow can be challenged, and every voice, no matter how small, can make change. In our final chapter, we'll take a step back and ask, what do all these stories mean? What can we learn from the hidden truths of golden ages? Chapter 6. What we can learn. Seeing history clearly. So, after looking closely at many famous golden ages, ancient Greece, the Islamic world, the Renaissance, and the Industrial Revolution, what can we learn? What do these stories, both bright and dark, tell us about history and about ourselves? First, we learn that history is never simple. It's not just a list of beautiful buildings, great inventions, or famous people. History is a mix of good and bad, light and shadow. Every golden age has its shining moments, but also hidden struggles. The more we look, the clearer the picture becomes. Second, we learn that who tells the story matters a lot. For hundreds and thousands of years, history has been written mostly by those in power: kings, rulers, rich people, or scholars. This means many voices are missing: the poor, women, slaves, workers, and everyday people who lived very different lives. When we only listen to one side, we miss half the truth. Third, understanding both sides of history helps us today. When we know that progress can come with pain and success can hide inequality, we can make better choices now. We can work to create a world where no one is left behind, where every voice matters, and where progress means true fairness and kindness. Finally, this journey shows us the power of curiosity and questions. It's easy to accept stories at face value, but real learning happens when we ask. Who benefits? Who is missing? And what is hidden? When we look deeper, we grow wiser. So the next time you hear someone say, "Those were the golden days," remember, every golden age has a dark side. But together, by learning and sharing, we can shine light on those shadows and create a better story for the future. Thank you for joining me on this journey through history's bright and dark sides. If you found this video interesting, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more simple English lessons and stories. Also, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What golden age surprised you the most? What did you learn today? Write your answers in the comments below. Remember, every story has more than one side. Keep asking questions, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next video.